If you were asked to name the true engine of modern civilization, you might point to coal, steam, or the microchip. But the catalyst of global growth, unprecedented population booms, and the rise of modern industrial empires was far humbler. It lived entirely in the dark, buried in the dirt. This is the story of the potato. Today it is the world's third most consumed food crop, surpassed only by rice, and wheat. More than 1 billion people eat it daily. It is mashed, fried, boiled, and baked. It is so deeply woven into the identity of nations like Ireland, Germany, and Poland, that we easily forget a fundamental historical truth. Before the late 16th century, not a single person in Europe, Asia, or Africa had ever seen one. Its journey from a feared toxic curiosity, shunned as the devil's apple, to a dietary savior that fueled the Industrial Revolution, is a saga of extreme adaptation, royal deception, demographic triumph, and unspeakable tragedy. To understand how our modern world was built, we must unearth the secret history of the world's most revolutionary tuber. Our story begins roughly 10,000 years ago, high in the Andes Mountains, around the wind-swept shores of Lake Titicaca, sitting more than 12,000 feet above sea level. This is an environment of brutal extremes. The sun burns intensely by day, while frost freezes the soil by night. At these altitudes, traditional grain crops like corn cannot survive. But wild varieties of the genus Solanum, members of the nightshade family, thrived. The problem was that they were highly toxic. Wild potatoes defend themselves with glycoalkaloids, specifically solanine and cacoanine. To eat them raw was to invite severe illness, even death. Yet, the early hunter-gatherers of the Altiplano observed wild guanacos, ancestors of the llama, licking clay before eating the toxic tubers. Taking a cue from nature, these early humans discovered that wrapping the potatoes in a slurry of clay and water neutralized the toxins. Over millennia of selective breeding, they gradually domesticated the plant, stripping away its chemical weapons and giving rise to the edible potato. By the peak of the Inca Empire in the 15th century, Andean farmers had developed an astonishing agricultural biodiversity. They cultivated over 4,000 distinct varieties of native potatoes, each meticulously adapted to microclimates, differing by just a few hundred feet of elevation. They developed potatoes that could grow in the dry valleys, and others that could withstand the deep freezes of the highest peaks. But their greatest breakthrough was not just agricultural. It was preservation. They invented the world's first freeze-dried food, known as chuño. To make chuño, potatoes were left out in the freezing night air to freeze, then thawed in the midday sun. Farmers would trample the water out of the softened tubers with their bare feet, wash them in cold mountain streams, and dry them thoroughly in the sun. The resulting product was lightweight, chalky, and practically indestructible. It could be stored in imperial granaries, known as colcas, for up to 10 years without spoiling. The Incan state apparatus was built on this subterranean foundation. These colcas lined the vast Inca road network, serving as state-managed insurance policies. If a drought destroyed the year's maize or quinoa, the empire survived on stockpiled chuño. Yet, this complex agricultural system was about to collide with an external force that would alter its destiny, and the destiny of the world, forever. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro and his Spanish conquistadors marched into the Andes. They came in search of gold and silver, blinded by the treasures of the Inca. In their greed, they initially paid little attention to the weird, dirty tubers the natives dug out of the ground, but they soon realized that this earth nut, as they called it, was incredibly filling and kept Spanish miners alive in the brutal silver mines of Potosí. In 1553, the Spanish chronicler Pedro Chiza de León published the first written account of the potato in Europe in his Chronicle of Peru. He described it as a kind of earth nut, which after it has been boiled, becomes as tender as a cooked chestnut. By the late 1560s, Spanish sailors, realizing that potatoes kept for months on voyages and miraculously prevented scurvy, brought the first specimens back to Europe, landing in Seville. But when the potato arrived in Europe, it did not receive a hero's welcome. Instead, it was met with deep suspicion, hostility, and disgust. To understand why, we must look at the scientific and religious mindset of early modern Europe. European botanists quickly realized that the potato belonged to the Solanaceae family, commonly known as nightshades. To the medieval mind, nightshades were associated with witchcraft, poisons, and hallucination. Because the potato grew entirely underground, it was deemed dirty and unfit for respectable dining tables. Even worse, the shape of the early European cultivars was knobby, uneven, and covered in eyes. In France, Switzerland, and Germany, a rumor spread that eating potatoes caused leprosy. The logic was simple and superstitious. The bumpy, discolored skin of the tuber resembled the lesions of a leper. Furthermore, some religious authorities pointed out a glaring theological red flag. The potato was nowhere to be found in the Holy Bible. If God wanted humans to eat it, why had he omitted it from Scripture? In 1748, the French Parliament went so far as to officially ban the cultivation of the potato, declaring it toxic and dangerous. Across most of the continent, the potato was relegated to animal feed, grown as a mere botanical oddity in the gardens of the wealthy. It was a food of last resort, eaten only by the desperate, the destitute, and the imprisoned. But as Europe entered a century of devastating wars and unpredictable climates, the ruling class began to realize they needed a miracle. By the mid-18th century, Europe was locked in a cycle of near-constant warfare and crop failures. The Little Ice Age brought unpredictable freezes, devastating wheat and rye harvests. When armies marched across Europe, they easily destroyed or confiscated above-ground grain fields, leaving peasant populations to starve. But a few visionary leaders noticed something. While wheat crops could be burned, potatoes remained safely insulated underground, ready to be dug up after the soldiers marched away. One of the first to weaponize the potato for national security was Frederick the Great, the King of Prussia. In 1756, facing the onset of the 7 Years' War, Frederick issued his famous Kartoffelbefehl, or potato decree. He ordered his administration to compel Prussian peasants to plant potatoes as a hedge against famine. The response from the town of Kolberg was famously hostile. They wrote back to the king, stating that the things had neither smell nor taste, not even the dogs would eat them, so they had no use for them. According to historical legend, Frederick resorted to a brilliant piece of reverse psychology. He planted a royal field of potatoes in Berlin, and stationed heavily armed soldiers to guard it day and night. But he secretly instructed the guards to be deliberately lax, accept bribes, and look the other way at night. The local peasants reasoned that if the crop was precious enough to warrant royal protection, it must be incredibly valuable. Sure enough, under the cover of darkness, peasants snuck in, stole the seed potatoes, and planted them in their own fields. While Frederick was deploying psychological tactics in Prussia, a French military pharmacist named Antoine-Augustin Parmentier was plotting his own potato revolution. Captured by the Prussians during the 7 Years' War, Parmentier was thrown into a prison where he was fed almost exclusively on a diet of potatoes. To his surprise, he did not contract leprosy or die. Instead, he remained remarkably healthy and energetic. When Parmentier returned to France, he dedicated his life to rehabilitating the potato's reputation. He knew that the key to winning over the public was to make the potato fashionable. He hosted grand, potato-only banquets for Paris's intellectual elite, inviting guests like Benjamin Franklin. He presented a bouquet of potato blossoms to King Louis XVI, who promptly pinned one to his buttonhole, while Marie Antoinette wore the purple flowers in her hair. The Parisian peasants obliged, stealing the forbidden tubers and spreading potato cultivation throughout the French countryside. The psychological dam had burst. Across Europe, the potato was finally accepted. To fully grasp how the potato changed the world, we must look at the sheer physics of agricultural yields. An acre of land planted with wheat requires flat, fertile soil. It requires labor-intensive threshing, milling, and baking before it can be consumed. In contrast, an acre of potatoes can grow in poor, rocky, and wet soil. It requires only boiling to be eaten. Most importantly, an acre of potatoes yields up to 4 times the calories of wheat on the exact same amount of land. A single acre of land planted with potatoes and a single cow for milk could sustain an entire family of 8 for a year. Because it grew underground, it was safe from hail, wind, and rampaging armies. Furthermore, the potato is a nutritional powerhouse. It is packed with vitamin C, potassium, and complex carbohydrates. Historians argue that the introduction of the potato literally put an end to famine in northern Europe. This massive surge in food security led to an unprecedented population boom. Between 1750 and 1850, the population of Europe nearly doubled. This newly expanded population provided the sheer muscle needed to fuel the Industrial Revolution. The machinery of the British, French, and German empires was powered by coal, but it was fueled, fundamentally, by the cheap, dense calories of the potato. Nowhere was the potato's impact more profound or more dangerous than in Ireland. By the early 19th century, Ireland was a country under British colonial rule. Most of the fertile land was owned by Protestant British landlords, who used it to graze cattle and grow grain for export back to Great Britain. The native Catholic Irish population was relegated to tiny, marginal plots of tenant land. To survive on these tiny fractions of an acre, the Irish peasants turned almost exclusively to one specific variety of potato, the Irish lumper. The lumper was not the most delicious potato, but it was incredibly robust and high-yielding in Ireland's damp, cool climate. It was so successful that by the 1840s, nearly half of the Irish population, roughly 4 million people, depended entirely on this single crop for their survival. It was a miracle of efficiency, but it was also an ecological ticking time bomb. In the summer of 1845, a mysterious disease swept across the potato fields of Ireland. It began as tiny black spots on the leaves of the plant. Within days, the entire plant would rot, releasing a foul, putrid stench that hung over the countryside. When farmers dug up their crops, they found nothing but a mushy, black ooze. The culprit was Phytophthora infestans, an aggressive water mold commonly known as late blight. Originating in the Americas, the pathogen had hitchhiked to Europe on trade ships. Because Ireland had cultivated a genetic monoculture, planting millions of genetically identical clones of the lumper potato, the crop had zero natural resistance. The blight spread with terrifying speed. What followed was Engorda More, the Great Hunger. Between 1845 and 1852, the Irish potato crop failed repeatedly. The results were catastrophic. Yet, the tragedy was not merely biological, it was political. Under the grip of laissez-faire economic theory and colonial prejudice, the British government refused to stop the export of food from Ireland. While over 1 million Irish people were actively starving, ships laden with Irish oats, barley, and beef continued to sail out of Irish ports bound for England. The famine changed the world forever. Roughly 1 million people died of starvation and disease. Another 1.5 million fled the country on overcrowded, disease-ridden vessels, known as coffin ships. This massive exodus created the modern Irish diaspora, permanently shifting the demographic, political, and cultural landscapes of the United States, Canada, Australia, and Great Britain. The potato, which had built the populations of Europe, had demonstrated the lethal danger of relying on a single cloned crop. The story of the potato is a reminder of our vulnerability and our resilience. Despite the tragedy in Ireland, the potato's march across the globe could not be stopped. As Western powers colonized Asia and Africa, they brought the potato with them. Today, the global center of gravity for potato production has shifted far from its Andean origin, and even from its European adoptive home. China and India are now the world's leading potato producers, utilizing the crop to feed their massive urbanizing populations. China alone produces around 90 million metric tons of potatoes annually, followed by India at 50 million. In the West, the potato underwent an industrial revolution of its own. In the mid-20th century, the rise of fast food turned the potato into a highly processed global commodity. Agriculturalist Luther Burbank developed the russet Burbank potato in the 1870s, a large, disease-resistant variety with a high starch content. This potato became the gold standard for the fast food industry, as its length and texture made it ideal for cutting into long, uniform French fries. The French fry became the ultimate symbol of modern convenience food. In the United States alone, The average person consumes over 110 pounds of potatoes a year, much of it fried. But as we look to the future, the potato faces new, existential challenges and unexpected frontiers. At the International Potato Center in Lima, Peru, scientists are working to preserve the genetic heritage of the potato. As climate change alters weather patterns and introduces new pests to the Andes, researchers are looking back to the wild, biodiverse ancestors cultivated by the Inca thousands of years ago. By crossbreeding commercial potatoes with wild, climate-resilient varieties, they hope to safeguard the world's food supply from future blights. And the potato's adaptability isn't just limited to Earth. In 1995, the potato made history by becoming the very first vegetable to be successfully grown in space, aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia. NASA and researchers from the University of Wisconsin-Madison developed technologies to grow potatoes in microgravity, proving that when humanity eventually voyages to Mars and beyond, the humble potato will likely be our primary source of sustenance. The humble potato will likely be our primary source of sustenance. From its origins in the frost-bitten soils of the high Andes to the courts of European monarchs. From the tragedy of the Irish fields to the far reaches of outer space, the potato has quietly shaped the course of human history. It is a reminder that the grand narrative of our species is not just written by kings, wars, or inventions. Sometimes it is written by the simple, resilient things